John, if you could talk, we started at George Norris coming out of the legislature, the only state that's fully public power, and expand on that a little bit.
Well, Nebraska truly is unique, and we have some, I think, great institutions in the state. I look at the unicameral, which George Norris had an influence on creating, and public power certainly is another institution that is unique to the state in that we are the only state, as Rick mentioned, that all of the electric systems are controlled and operated by consumer-owned systems, whether they be public power districts, municipalities, electric cooperatives. That's a very rich tradition. It actually goes clear back into the 1880s with the first municipal electric systems in the state. I believe Crete was one of the first ones. Grand Island had a fairly early municipal electric system. Public power districts were formed in the 1930s.
Right.
And we've been through an interesting transition. At one time, we had investor-owned electric utilities operating in the state, but the last of those was taken over by Omaha Public Power District in 1946. The great thing about public power is it gives the customers a direct voice in the decisions that are made by the utility, and the utility operates for one purpose, and it's to provide reliable, affordable electricity to our consumers.
Right. As in the magazine insert, I talk a little bit about over the years, things have kind of consolidated. NPPD, there's consumers was first, and we've got some of their old lines yet in our service territory. You're doing electricity, you're doing water. A lot of people don't know that you have some interest in water and some of the canals down by the North Platte, and it's kind of an interesting mix where you're exactly correct. Everybody has a voice. We're locally governed by a board of directors that is chosen by the customers that we serve, and so that's just a great thing, I think, for Nebraska and for all the consumers of public power.
Well, I think one thing that sometimes is maybe not appreciated is even though we've seen cost increases and the utilities are trying to do everything they can to manage those, Nebraska still has very competitive electric rates compared to other parts of the country. We have all been focused over the years on providing low-cost electricity on a reliable basis to our customers, and historically Nebraska's average electric rates have always been among the lowest 10 cost states in the country, and I think all of us are committed to carrying on that tradition. Although, as I mentioned in my opening comment, change a lot of new regulations,
right.
And we are having to spend very large amounts of money, and that's happening not just in Nebraska but around the nation.
Right. Yeah, Pat. We had Pat Pope on the show last week, I believe. He did a great job, and we talked a little bit about the EPA and his struggles with, the cross-state transport rule, or that kind of thing coming out of the EPA. We didn't get any farther into it, but there's many other ones coming down the pike here shortly.
Well, there's been a slide that's been prepared that depicts over about an 8-year period the various environmental regulations that are coming out of EPA, and it's been affectionately referred to by some as the train wreck slide. And the concern is there are so many regulations coming so quickly that are imposing very substantial costs on power plants of all types, but primarily on coal-fired generation. And we're going to take what is the most abundant source of energy in this country, coal, that gives us energy independence, and we're fortunate in Nebraska because we're close to low sulfur, very environmentally sound coal from Wyoming, and we're making it much more expensive, if not prohibitive, to use that to produce electricity on a cost-effective and reliable basis.
Right.
But the point is you're set up to burn coal. And regardless of what happens, if EPA regulates the heck out of it and makes it more expensive, you have no choice, but the rates have to go up, and there's no alternative at that point. Because what do you have? You're shooting for 10% wind, You've got a fractionated nuclear. Coal's the big animal, and if they're going to regulate that to that degree, it's inevitable that the prices are going to go up.
Well, it is, and for NPPD, we feel very fortunate. We have a diverse mix of generating resources today. You mentioned nuclear. I believe last year our nuclear plants supplied about 40% of the electricity for our customers, and so and today at the fair, our subject of discussion is nuclear power. We'll talk about all energy issues, but we have some friends from OPPD here who work at the Fort Calhoun station.
Yep.
Some experts from NPPD on nuclear power. We're going to have our operations manager here this afternoon. And we need, as the booth indicates, we need a diverse mix of energy resources. It's just like your investment portfolio. You don't want to put, if you have one left, you don't want to put everything in one basket, so to speak. And for electricity production, we want a diverse mix of resources. We want renewables. We're adding more of that, but nuclear is very important. Coal is important. Natural gas is important, and we're constantly looking at new technologies.
Well, can our local senators and congressmen and representatives in Washington have any influence on how the EPA functions and what they do? It seems to me like they're.
Well, the bottom line right now is that the political mood in the U.S. House of Representatives is one of pushing back on EPA and pushing back on perception of over-regulation in other parts of the federal government. And they passed legislation. Unfortunately, the United States Senate has a different makeup, and they are not as receptive to that legislation. I think the reality for the next year is we're going to see the House pass bills to rein in some EPA initiatives, and the chances of them going anywhere in the Senate are quite limited.
Yeah. Given the economic climate, I would think they'd be more concerned about that, what it's going to have to do to the average taxpayer if all of a sudden energy rates, because you can't do without energy, you've got to have the power. I would think they'd be concerned that from that angle of things, that it's going to force public power or power generation of any sort to raise its rates, which inevitably will have a crunch on those however many million unemployed we have right now. There's a lot of economic things that are a result of raising that would make it just that much worse.
Yeah, and Pat Pope talked about one of the most recent thing coming out of EPA and how the NPPD board acted on some low NOx burners, I believe, at GGS 1.
Unit 1.
And talked about the financial impact of that, in that $6 million range, and that's just the beginning of what could be coming down. But like John said, NPPD does have a good balanced mix. Here within the next couple, 3, 4, 5 years, that carbon-free percentage output is going to be getting close to 50%, and that's
what you're after. Yeah, that's what we all want.
Well, and I'd like to follow up on a point that was made about energy. Energy is really at the foundation of our economy, and I'd say electricity in particular. You think about everything we do, whether it's commerce, whether it's comfort in our home or convenience, it all starts with electricity. The radio won't operate without electricity. You can't run this operation. Customers can't hear it without having some sort of electric-powered piece of equipment. Everything we've come to do starts with electricity, and we think for Nebraska, low-cost, reliable electricity that's provided by a multitude of public power suppliers has been a great economic advantage for our state.
Sure.
It's been a benefit for large industrial concerns like Nucor Steel up around Norfolk. They're a huge consumer of energy and part of their process. But it also affects anybody, whether they're on a fixed income farm operation, and if they can save money on their electric bill, they have that to spend somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah.